Hi, my name is Chris Bamberg. This is Brian Johnson and Dr. Liesa Hart. Today we're going to do a presentation on blending. The importance of food is so underrated in today's culture, and we just really want to educate people about how food can really help with healing.
I always like to tell my patients that real food is so superior to supplements. I use supplements as a last resort, as a bridge, that sort of thing, but there's no substitute for those phytonutrients, and this blending class that we're having today is awesome to show you how to just make this part of your daily routine.
Now, I'll piggyback on what Dr. Hart said. There's so many phytochemicals and medicinal compounds that are found in fruits and vegetables that if you can find a way to break them down, which is what the blending does, so that you have maximal absorption, the type of vitality and health benefits that you experience from it is bar none. So, I agree with what you said as well as Chris.
You can also find more information on our website, which is corpfitusa.com or
www.drliesa.com.
Thank you.
Everyone, my name is Brian Johnson. This is Mr. Chris Bamberg and Dr. Liesa Hart. Thank you for having everyone here. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about blending, and we're going to get into the health benefits, practicality, how to make it work for you, and potentially touch on some specific elements that you may be experiencing and how we can relate these to specific fruits and vegetables that are here. So without further ado, what we'll do is we'll actually start talking about the specific things that are on the table, and then we'll actually get into making the smoothie, and then we'll actually sample it out and do some Q&A. And I'm the kind of person where it's not going to hurt my feelings. If you have a question while I'm in the middle of talking something to Chris, then please go ahead and ask. That way I can directly answer it then, and it helps you out rather than you have to remember at the end of the time. It's not going to throw me off, and I don't think it's going to throw Chris off either. So
I'd rather you ask the question than forget about the question, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we like to do is we're going to go over one kind of specific recipe that's kind of like a favorite smoothie recipe. One of the things is that the more you study this, you realize that it doesn't matter what your disease or your symptoms are, there's nutrients that are associated to it, and you can probably eat a certain way or drink a certain smoothie that will help you with whatever ailments that you're currently suffering from. So that's really the goal and the direction of what we see blending as a healing recipe.
and on that note, the smoothie that we're actually going to be talking about is, Jeff's favorite smoothie on page 23. There's a book here if you want to circulate it around. I have a few more if y'all want to kind of look through it, but that's where we're getting all the information that we're talking to you about. If you want to get into the specifics of what vegetables do what and what fruits do what, then the Conquering Any Disease book, which is also there, that's where we're pulling this information from. So, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So,
Raspberries?
yeah.
What we did is we actually substituted the strawberry with the raspberry, and you can interchange any of these things, and we'll kind of talk about the specifics of, why we did it, what's going on. Put some water in there. So you can start off with, I usually put about 8 ounces of water. It really just depends on what kind of consistency that you want. So what we're going to do is we're just actually going to put what it says in there so that we can do it right the first time. So 8 ounces.
Yes, 2 cups.
And the reason why I chose Fiji was because this is probably one of the most readily available good pH waters that you can get, whether you're in here or the Grange where my parents live and there's absolutely nothing. This is something you can find pretty common.
There's any deep artesian water that is really clean, hasn't been tap water before, hasn't had chlorine and other chemicals in it, those are really deep sources. Artesian water means it's never seen the light of day until you pretty much usually open the bottle. There's a lot of different artesian wells. Fiji's probably one of the most common, but there's some in the United States, there's some in Europe, and they're really good high pH, high bicarbonate loaded waters. Really good for you.
The kind of water you use is important because that is your vehicle of what's going to put those nutrients in there. And if you're talking like inflammation issues and potential disease scenarios, alkaline water will help to change the pHs of the body. And if you're really trying to keep a good tab on it, the best thing to do would be to get some pH strips so you can kind of see how your body's fluctuating, and you can adjust your vegetable intake or your water intake to reach the desired effect that you're trying to.
Yeah, one of the things I want to touch on too is we've already washed off these fruits and vegetables. I highly encourage everybody to do research about like the Dirty Dozen or just understanding what fruits and vegetables you should buy, organic or non-organic, just simply because of pesticides. So it's very easy to be mindful of that. The next ingredient we're going to go into is corn. Since corn is typically in the leaf thing, you don't necessarily need to buy organic. It would be good to buy organic just simply from a nutrient standpoint, but because it's protected from that outer coating, it's actually not really necessary. So what we do is we don't cook the corn. What we do is we just trim the corn off the cob.
Here, cut the rest of it. And you usually do. Very important here. My teacher told us a funny story. One of his clients made one of these smoothies, and he said he followed the whole directions. But here's the trick: don't put the cob in there. Okay, it will probably chew it up, but from a taste perspective, it's not going to be ideal. Okay, so very important. You see this corn, how it is very yellow? I have yet to see one this yellow. When you're doing and getting corn, you want to make sure to pull the husk back so you can see the color differences, because if you have one that is white, the phytochemicals that corn is going to provide you is not near as dense as what you're going to get from this. This is a supreme brain food, and it's also good for blood sugar levels for diabetics, surprisingly enough, considering that it is corn, but it's in its raw, which helps out. There's lutein in here for your eyes, there's lecithin for brain, and choline as well. This is a very good food that you can use that will help a lot.
And there's very few foods with those combinations of phytochemicals, actually. And they have to be eaten raw. If you cook corn, you actually cook out most of those phytochemicals, and so that you really lose. Might still taste good, but you might lose a lot of the nutrient benefits. Next one we're going to talk about, when Brian's taking care of that, is the avocado.
This one can be messy, so forewarning. Do it over the sink.
We're going to talk about a couple different pieces. One of the things that we do is avocado is obviously a powerful essential vegetable fat. It's very anti-inflammatory. There's all sorts of amazing things about that. One of the things that we do specifically is we actually blend up the avocado seed. One of the special things about the avocado seed is it actually has 12 grams of soluble fiber. If you've ever looked at a box of Cheerios, it has an endorsement from the American Heart Association because it has 1 gram of soluble fiber, right? So this is like eating 12 bowls of Cheerios at once. And the avocado seed, you might think, well, is it dangerous or anything? But it's not. It's actually really just soluble fiber. And it blends up. If you have once again, we're using a Blendtex blender, so it blends up. It's very tasteless, so it doesn't destroy the taste or mess up the taste. It's a very tasteless item.
Yeah, that's actually the most potent source of soluble fiber that you can use for heart disease purposes. It actually clears out the plaque in the arteries. There's 400 mcgs of lutein in there. There's 150 milligrams of beta-cisterol. So that thing is packed. That's actually your second highest source of natural occurring glutathione, which is a phase 2 detoxifier, which is extremely important for all around immune system. What do you look for?
A spoon, maybe.
Glutathione
is one of these enzymes that can actually pass the blood-brain barrier to fight off free radical damage in the brain. So if you're fighting from any neurological disease, it's all the same. It's free radical damage in the brain, destroying neurons. So it doesn't matter if it's Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. Glutathione is basically the only enzyme that you can use to fight off that type of damage. The number one food, mind you, we're not putting in a smoothie, but it's asparagus.
Okay, I've got a random question.
Yes.
So I see white asparagus in the stores.
Yes.
And my understanding is that most of the nutrients in most of our fruits and vegetables are in the colored parts.
Sure.
So what do we get from white asparagus?
Well, so first of all, the reason why it's white is asparagus, I don't know if you know this, but it takes years to grow. Years, right? It takes a long time, and the thickness of it is the age of the plant. So that gives you an understanding about asparagus. 2, that's one of the reasons why we think it's such a powerful food is because it does take so many years to grow. What they do when they grow an asparagus to keep it white is they actually keep putting dirt over it so it doesn't get chlorophyll. And so that's what keeps it from turning green. From a glutathione perspective, I don't actually know if white asparagus has less from a nutrient perspective of that aspect, but I do know that that's what affects the color. I wouldn't think that there's any other reason to want to buy it. Okay.
I would agree with that. I asked my teacher about that in specific, and he said the same thing. I don't know for scientific fact if the glutathione levels are lower. My opinion would be because of the lack of sunlight that you're going to have some type of nutrients that are obviously not there just due to the raising process without the sun.
What is the odor in your urine from asparagus?
Great question. So when you eat asparagus, you want to drink a lot of water because that odor is the toxins that it's pulling out of your system. That's what asparagus does.
It's only why some people have an odor, and that's why when you really get clean, that odor can generally go away. So it's, if you don't know, asparagus is a diuretic, so it helps you flush water, and that's one of the things it's doing when it's helping you flush water is flush toxins.
Yeah, so here's another thing too. This is kind of important because we've got a couple friends here that have got some potential metal fillings. And from a vegetable perspective, cilantro is on here. I pulled a no-brainer and forgot to bring it, but cilantro is your most potent heavy metal chelator. Very important if you're dealing with metal issues and you're chelating using cilantro, you want to make sure that you're eating asparagus with it to boost your glutathione or your phase 2 detoxification to take those metals and to excrete them out of your system so that way you're balancing out both ends.
You want to go into mint?
Sure, mint. Great for asthma. It's got some stuff called rosmarinic acid in it, but it's also great for people who have IBS. It's very yin or cooling. Most of the stuff in this smoothie will be yin because it's raw, except for the ginger, which is a yang component, which will kind of add some heat to it. But the mint is very good. The mint is good for beet. Anyone who's got cancer issues, the beet is awesome, and the mint really helps to tone down the beet if you're having to take a lot of it. So that way it kind of balances out the flavor well.
From a flavor perspective, in your mint, in your smoothie, beet is a very strong flavor, especially just raw beet, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to use a huge beet, and we only use about a half of one. We usually also sometimes include the beet leaves.
Yeah, the beet leaves, these are actually very strong because they're very sturdy, but the beet leaves is where you have a lot of calcium. If you can get past the look of it and throw it in your smoothie and throw a lime in there with it and just, for the sake of it, choke it down, I guess you'd say.
There's some really amazing healing stories that have come from beet and fighting cancer, right? The reason why it has that deep red color is it's very much like it's the phytochemical is the closest thing to hemoglobin, right? So it's really a big blood detoxifier. I don't know if we have time for stories, but...
Well, quick one. My client in specific has a testimony of one of his teacher's clients had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which, as you know, stage 5 means, see you later kind of a deal. She actually reversed it doing 6 pounds of beets a day. God bless her, that's a lot of beets.
Especially raw.
She ate them?
Smoothed them.
You can be surprised at how much you can actually get down. The amount of phytochemicals that you can shove down in a 40-ounce smoothie is a lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty different. It's dramatic on the vitality that you experience on something like that. The beet also has some stuff called uridine in it, which is great for people who've got depression issues. It'll increase your oxygen uptake up to 400%, which is a lot. That's the reason why it's one of your number one blood purifiers, which is important when you're talking disease prevention and disease cure kind of a deal. Is blood is number one.
Gonna go put in a cucumber. One of the things about cucumber too is you probably always buy organic because non-organic they typically wax them. It's really hard to get the wax off, right? So if you do buy non-organic, usually what we do is I peel them. If I can't get organic, I'll peel the skin off. One of the things about cucumbers is it's the number one food and one of the number one vegetable anyway in silica. A lot of people don't know this, but people that have bone density issues, people are always trying to take calcium to supplement for their acidic diets, for bone density purposes. But silica is really like the number one, phytochemical for rebuilding bones. The number one fruit, which we're not putting in here, by the way, is plums, right? So if you're in silica, very anti-inflammatory too.
Yeah, and that's your most alkaline vegetable. So if you're dealing with inflammation issues and pH issues and immune system issues for that part, cucumber is awesome. It's actually, from a natural medicine perspective, it's known as a refrigerant because it has the ability to cool the body up to 40 degrees, which is a lot. So it's extremely hydrating at the same time. Apple.
I'm gonna interrupt and share about the cucumbers. If you buy what's called pickling cucumbers, they're smaller and they're almost never waxed.
Yeah.
And so then they have more of the skin, which if you're smoothieing will give you more nutrition.
Very important too, the skin is actually where you have the phytochemicals that help to balance blood sugars.
Yeah.
So for diabetics.
Specifically the cucumber. And you shouldn't buy seedless. Generally seedless, genetically modified stuff is way lacking in the same phytonutrients.
If you do buy a non-organic cucumber and it still has a wax,
what would you recommend the best way to clean the vegetable? Well, that and other vegetables?
High alkaline water or veggie wash?
Yeah, at least 11 and a half.
So
Yeah.
not like soap and water?
No. Well, these two.
Well, there's some people that use
Some
soap
people
and
that do,
water.
yeah, absolutely.
Depending on, well, I don't know which one would be better, the soap or the water. But I'm sure the combination of the two's got to be pretty drastic.
Well, I have a water machine that produces different pHs of water, and I wash all my fruits and vegetables at 11.5 pH.
And honestly, it is amazing when you wash something in 11.5 pH water and a tap water, and you taste them side by side. You can literally see in the 11.5 water where all of the waxes and stuff have been pulled off, and it's literally the same color as the fruit or the vegetable. And when you taste them, it's a huge contrast in texture and flavor because the fruit or the vegetable will absorb what it's in. So when you're putting it in tap and an unfiltered water, it's taking all those chemicals and it's putting it in. When you taste it, if you're tasting it by itself, it tastes good unless you have something to compare it to and you're like, wow, I've been missing out.
On
So
another
that's a big difference.
on another day, we do a water just demonstration, just understanding that you don't realize how many chemicals are in that, and you've been washing your fruits and vegetables forever, and those chemicals you're not washing pesticides off, you're washing chemicals in to your fruits and vegetables. It really does affect the taste. You just didn't realize it because you've never pre-tested or whatever. But we make it pretty visual. Apples.
Anybody heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away? That's very important, and I never realized it until recently. But there's anywhere from 300 to 385 different phytochemicals in that apple.
Most of them, and one of the things that we've learned, especially from our teacher, is that most of the good phytochemicals are in nature itself. Generally puts it in reproduction, right? So near the core, near the seeds of fruits and vegetables, that's generally where so many of the phytochemicals are that are so good for us.
If you were to eat an apple, the best way to do it is to eat everything but the stem, because the core and the seeds is where you have a lot of the dense phytochemicals. Like the seeds actually have cyanide in them, which is a derivative that actually kills cancer, but it's in small amounts. You don't want to take 50 different apple seeds and put them in the smoothie. Just don't do it like that. But one smoothie with the seeds in there is great for you because of what it does from a cyanide perspective and an immune system boosting.
Ancient Mayans knew about cyanide, and that if in small doses it was really good for digestion, and then they also discovered that in large doses it could kill, so that they could also use it as a poison. But they did know about the healing benefits of it even hundreds of years ago.
One of the huge things about the apple is that the pectin is what produces the bowel movements, and that's really one of the main compounds as to why an apple a day keeps a doctor away. Because there's an old saying that I heard from another one of my teachers. His teacher told him, big bowel movements, little hospital. Small bowel movements, big hospital, because of the stuff that you have going on. But if you think about it, that's the actual truth. So that apple will help, and it's actually pretty crazy because it can help with diarrhea, and it can also help with constipation, is the wisdom in the apple.
Lime.
Interesting little critter, isn't it?
It's a good
So
one.
you see how it's white, okay? The white is actually where you have the deglucarate and the glycosides, which is a known, researchable carcinogen or a cancer type of preventative, and actually it's an aim towards it. The lime in itself is very potent. Like when you're doing smoothies, unless you like lime, you really only need about a third of it, but it makes a huge difference if you're trying to do broccoli and all kinds of greens that don't necessarily taste great. The lime's awesome.
I generally do half, and then you got to make sure to save as much of that rind as possible.
Yeah, it's awesome for detoxification of the kidneys, and it's great for the complexion of the skin. Ginger, my favorite. Anybody have inflammation and pain issues? I do too, and in the mornings it's usually rough when it's cold. Then you put an inch to 2 inch piece of ginger in your smoothie and say la vie.
They have there's a formula for it's called fire water, and it literally is they boil the ginger root in water, and so that people that have chronic pain, literally they can drink the water, and so they can get off opiates and all these pain medications because it numbs them out with any addictive or side effects in the body, and it helps neutralize all that pain.
Yeah, it inhibits COX-2 production, which is what Aleve and Advil does.
There's actually even a TED talk about this doctor that discovered the difference between the blood veins that are normally in your body and then the blood veins that connect to cancer. And he designed medication to target those blood veins so that the cancer can't metastasize, right? And then But one of the things he said is, well, it's now in animal testing. It'll be years. It'll go to human testing. It'll be years before it ever hits the market. So we went out into the world to find if you could find these same type of properties in food. And garlic and ginger were the number one and number two foods that contain these properties that can fight off the cancer and keep it from metastasizing.
And ginger is very potent. You know, it's something that I use daily. It's also got 9 compounds in it that are similar to the effects of what serotonin is on the body. So it helps with anxiety, it helps with digestive issues. It's also very yang or very heating. Like you can drink that fire water, like no joke. If you've ever had a shot of Goldschlager, which I haven't, that's exactly what it feels like because it heats you all the way up from the toes all the way up to the top of your head. So it's great.
He's never had one.
How did y'all prepare that though prior? Just cut it from the root?
Yeah.
So a giant root is so cheap, and really all you need is a sliver every day, right? I made the mistake of not knowing how much to put in, and it will mess the flavor up of your smoothie really quick if you put too much in.
Yeah, it's potent.
You didn't boil it or anything like that?
What he was talking about with the fire water, you can boil it, but what I'll do is we can probably make some with this when we're done. I'll put like a 3-inch piece in there, and I'll put some goji berries or something in it to kind of cool it off a little bit, and just down it. And I'll tell you what, man, it works like a champ if you've got chronic pain issues.
And you get the same effect if you boil it and use that water, or if you cut the piece and eat it?
In my opinion, I haven't boiled it myself. But I would have to say, just because you are not denaturing it, period, but just grinding it down to where it's completely absorbable by the system, I would have to say that's probably going to be just a little bit more effective because you're not heating it.
Taking it that way is probably a little harder though. But
And keep in mind these results that people are getting, they may vary from person to person.
Everyone's different.
So.
and the way it reacts to it is totally different too. But blueberries.
Blueberries, great eye food. Very high in lutein, which is actually, something back in World War II, they used to mix blueberries with bilberry and basically make a jelly for the pilots because of what it did to their eyesight. It's the third highest in the antioxidant field. You don't have to get blueberries in an organic form if you make sure that you wash them because it's not a porous vegetable. Like when we were talking about the raspberries, raspberry has pores all over it, so that's something you want to make sure that you get organic because there's no way in the world that you would be able to get all the waxes and the pesticides and things out of the grooves that they do. But blueberries is something that you can do that with, and they get expensive when you're not buying them. When you're buying them organic. So,
Magic berries.
anybody ever had goji berries? Yeah, goji berries are awesome. That specific brand, I wanted to make sure we got those, and y'all can check them out. But those are actually some of the best ones that I've ever seen because they are not dried out completely.
They're still kind of moist.
Yeah, the goji berries are awesome because they do multiple things. It's a superfruit. It's a complete protein source. There's 21 essential amino acids in there. There's 18 different trace minerals in there.
50 times the amount of beta carotene of carrots. You know they told you carrots were good for your eyes? You'd have to eat 50 pounds of carrots to equal a pound of goji berries.
Yeah, it's got the highest amount of beta carotene in it. So it's got high amounts of arginine. So people with heart disease, it's awesome because it dilates your blood vessels too, which is good. It also has the ability to stimulate the pituitary to produce luteinizing hormone, which is good as well, which is growth hormone. So that's one of the things that I try to keep on hand, but I like to get them out of the bag. So just be careful. If you're diabetic, you don't want to do those because of the sugars that are in them. You would have to make an adjustment to the juice or something like that. But I would, they're great, especially if you can get your little ones to eat them because they're great snacks.
Kiwi.
Kiwi. 3 times higher in vitamin C than oranges.
Great for asthma.
Studies done for helping to alleviate symptoms, and I've even heard reversals from my teacher and multiple people on asthma issues because of the kiwi. Now, it's not specifically the vitamin C, but there are components that are within the kiwi that act synergistically with the vitamin C in the body to help that. And I tested it myself personally. When my allergies get real bad, I've eaten a kiwi, and it's almost instantaneous that my nose will actually open up to where I can breathe. So I have experienced that for myself. Like I said, everyone is different though, but it's definitely something that you can implement and try out. And it helps out with the smoothie flavorage for sure.
One of the things about when you really start studying this stuff is you can start to see phytochemicals, right? And so when you open up cut a strawberry in half and cut a kiwi, you can see all these shiny little crystals near the seeds and how it reflects, and you're like, that's where the good stuff is, right? You really start to recognize that when you start eating more of these foods. And the wonderful thing about science is the more we dive in, the more we learn about it. There's still so many phytochemicals in here, we don't know what they do or what impact they have on the body, but the more we study, the more we learn, and there's God's medicine right here.
And it's also good to help with the flavor too. So, what else we got?
I think we're, black sesame. Yeah.
Black sesame seed, one of your top seeds. It's got the highest amount of phytosterols, which are basically plant-like hormone substances. It's got a quarter cup of that has 35% of your RDA amount of organic colloidal calcium, which is absorbable by the body versus a supplement form. It's got high amounts of fiber, so if someone's backed up and constipated, black sesame seeds are awesome. It's a gene builder, which is known as a hormone builder in Eastern medicine.
Endocrine boosting.
Yeah. So, and it's also, from what I've been told, it's known to turn gray hair back to original colors because of the copper content and the high mineral content in it.
What about growing hair?
Yeah. It's funny you say that, but in the book it talks about...
Except for on my back.
Yeah. It talks about using crude onion juice on your head twice a day to help with alopecia. Which, yeah, no joke. It's in there. I can find it for you.
No, I'm fine. I'm not
I'll pass.
We'll find you a model. I just want your hair. That's all I want.
You want rosemary?
I have some good hair.
You can put some in there. Put a little chunk in there.
I actually have a rosemary tree.
So here's the trick. When you do this, and especially if you're sampling to little ones, you can't screw it up. You have to taste it first because you get one shot. I haven't got my second shot yet with her. So it's always a chore trying to get something that she'll do. And I'm like, come on, just take a drink. So what I'll do when I'm doing this, yeah, it's always good to make sure that you just take the time to cut the components up small enough to where you don't have to sit there and shake them around or stick a knife or something in there, just because it's a lot better from a time perspective.
I probably should have cut up that cucumber and apple a little more.
I think we'll be right.
I haven't shut it.
So what we'll do is we'll hit pulse on there.
One of the things, go ahead. One of the things about this is that when we do this, when he really does the blending
You
after
want
a
to do
period of
that,
time,
but here we go.
is we're going to let this go for about probably a minute, let it sit for a minute, and then do it for another minute. We really want to micronize everything. And then what we mean by that is we're going to break everything down to its absolute smallest component. We want it to be as bioavailable and easily absorbable into a system as much as possible, right? So we just want to make sure that everything is broken down to its smallest layer.
And do it, let it settle, do it, let it
Yeah, do it, let's, well,
We'll just run it twice. We'll put some ice in it the second round.
yeah, and that way it doesn't, because it does, one of the things is when you get a really powerful blender, it will get hot. And you don't want to get too hot because the same thing applies. You don't want to get too cold or too hot because
Yeah. And a cold smoothie, just take it from me, it tastes a lot better than a warm one.
So a lot of us make it and put it in the fridge, And
Good point. And on that too, keep in mind if you're fighting some type of illness, careful with the ice cubes that you use, because if you're using contaminated ice cubes, then that's just something that's going to contaminate your smoothie. So it just depends on how picky you want to get. I'm just throwing it out there for you.
all right, here we go.
Put some ice in there. We're going to put a little bit of goji berries in there.
Here, some more
It smells like it tastes good at least.
So one of the bright red colors is definitely from the beet. That's
Don't get it on you. It does not come out. I don't care how good you are.
It'll stain your skin too, or just?
It'll sting.
You definitely leave a reminiscence.
Have red lips.
Yeah.
Red
It
lips.
sure-
Oh yeah. Oh, everyone.
Everybody.
I gotta bring some to the people out there too.
We're gonna do what we can here.
We do the chef test. More berries and some more ice.
Okay.
More ice and then we'll be good to go. It's got a little limey taste.
Why do you-
That's good.
I was gonna say you could add some more cucumbers if we need to make
I
more.
think I'm gonna add some more gojis. You can grab some ice and we'll do it.
Those some more cucumbers.
Put a few more. And now, if you're diabetic, you would probably want to go to about an 80% vegetable, 20% fruit. Fruits that you can use are lime, lemon, the more bitter ones. I don't necessarily think you want to mix your smoothie with them.
What about yogurt?
Depending upon whether your body can assimilate it and whether you have dairy issues. I personally don't recommend it just because of the amount of dairy issues that people that I've dealt with. most people use it for a probiotic, and I think there's other ones out there that are better, for sure.
Use what for a probiotic?
Dairy, yogurt.
Yogurt.
So,
One of the things about probiotics is people buy them all the time. If it's in a pill form, one of the things about probiotics is that you need live, right? And if it's in a pill, how long has it been in that pill? And you really think it's still live in any form or fashion? Really good probiotics will be in the refrigerated section. So not only is it live and active enzymes, you can give them like a shot. Like we buy a Good Belly. Good Belly, one of the powerful things about Good Belly is it has been proven to make it pass through hydrochloric acid in your stomach and survive that to be actually healthy. It's one thing to be mindful of. Sometimes you get out of your shakes and you can just drink them straight, but if you're gonna take probiotics, it's a good way to get
the
it.
good bellies are great. I
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah.
Come in several different flavors.
I think we should do pretty good at making sure all the little crazy ones are out of there. Here, you wanna hand those out?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I know, we got a lot, so pour small.
Do they have glasses first?
Everybody gets a glass,
Yeah,
yeah.
before that get this.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do what?
It's okay.
I keep strictly kosher.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Since I don't know what
Yeah.
else is
I gotta
in
bring
your
two out
burger,
there. I
I
wanna mention
will.
That's
No
pretty
problem.
fine. I'll drink yours.
Guys?
I'll take offense to it.
It's very good, man.
Go ahead and drink up. Try it. Tell us
How
what you
many
think.
more do we have left?
Dr. Hurt?
I'd like to try.
Chris?
Yep. And 2 for the office staff out there.
Okay.
That's part of the deal.
We'll make it happen.
How's the twang?
Yeah, it
It's
does.
got a little lime
A
to
little
it,
powerful.
but you think about the nutrients in there, and I usually can get past it at that point. It's definitely something that'll give you a little zing for sure.
We bought bananas.
You can put bananas in there. If you've got asthma issues, that'll be something you might want to steer away from just because of the type of energy
It's a
that
very
it brings.
damp food, so we
That's
don't
one.
generally recommend it for people, especially if you have asthma issues, or if you're not a very active person and sweat a lot, because it is such a damp food. And it's grown in a really hot climate, so a lot of people have, dampness in the body from that. It's kind of hard to explain.
Most people use it for the potassium, but you got 60% more potassium in the avocado.
Yeah,
So
and
that's something that you can
And a
change.
fig is a really good substitute too.
Well, I love the consistency of the bananas.
Yeah, and a lot of people like the sugar from it
It
though,
adds
too.
flavor,
It's a
too.
good taste.
Oh, the sweet, yeah.
Yeah, but same
So
those
Brian,
apply.
when you're making these, you're following these exact recipes, right? Like exactly, and you drink those.
I'd
and-
say I have a tendency to do my own Brian's
Mine is probably about 5 of those recipes put together.
But you know, the beauty about that is that Jeff's taking the time to make it taste good,
Yeah.
along with having the chemical compounds that you need for specific things. So what I would do until you kind of get the hang of it is find one that you like and use it, and you can kind of tweak it from there.
That's right, especially there's one specifically for certain symptoms or whatever, right? So
And
look
I-
for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I myself, I'll use steel cut oats in mine. I'll put my protein in there too, that way you're not having to do 2 different things. I'll take raw sweet potatoes and cut 4 or 5 ounces and peel it and put it in there too. So it just depends on what you want, I
You
don't
consume that whole thing in a day, basically, or in
I'll
like a
drink one of
day?
those for one meal. That's,
He
It'll clear
probably
it
drinks
out.
way more than most people, right? So he's making 40 ounces. Mine actually makes like 60 ounces. Mine's usually 3
Right.
for me. I normally just drink one at 3 mornings in a row because it's my very first meal of the day. I like to put all those nutrients in a nice empty stomach before I start my day.
man, I tell you, it's a pretty dramatic difference, especially if you're having digestive issues. One thing too is if you have lack of digestive fire, putting ice in your smoothie is not really recommended. You're going to want to eat it warmer. You may want to throw some ginger in and it kind of boosts your metabolism up a little bit, but some people have issues with that, so the ice may not work.
Thanks, man.
So how is it? Not bad considering
Mine's
what's in there, everything but the front yard, huh?
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah,
I could drink
believe it or
this
not.
easily.
There's a lot of nutrients in there when you really start researching nuts and bolts on each one of them.
If cholesterol or heart disease is an issue for you, that avocado seeds, it's a big deal.
You can actually make avocado seed hollandaise in that food cookbook, and it is awesome. My teacher made it with asparagus. And actually, what's funny is that's actually when I found out that I wasn't allergic to avocado anymore from taking probiotics.
He used to make his lips swell up, but
Yeah,
once
big
he
time.
restored his digestive system back to normal,
Coconut too. I don't have any issues. Like I could eat a whole one, no problem now.
there's a big difference between genetic allergies and allergies you develop from a weak digestive
Leaky
system.
gut.
Yeah, they call it leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah, if you're not born with it, then, I'm not a doctor. Dr. Harders, I'll send you to her for
No.
those questions.
If you don't know, I mean, number one dairy in America is dairy.
Number one dairy in
aller-
America.
Number one dairy.
Number one
That makes complete
allergy. Number one allergies in America
Yeah, you cleared it
is
up.
dairy. Wheat, gluten, peanuts. Go down the chain. It's pretty ugly.
Anybody have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Hart? I mean, just more medical-based questions or, at all?
It's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We're gonna try and do these more often. This was our first one, obviously, so, I think you guys did a great job, though.
Absolutely.